What's up guys, and welcome to today's video and the fourth episode of the Haunted 50 series, where we talk about the most haunted, paranormal, and downright creepy places across the United States. In each episode, we'll be focusing on a particular state, and today we'll be focusing on the state of Georgia, home to places like Lake Lanier, the Marshall House, and Factor's Walk, with the last two located in Savannah, Georgia, one of the most haunted cities in America. And in one of these locations, bones were even found under the floorboards, and they weren't discovered until years after they were placed there. So without further ado, let's dive right into Georgia and see some of the most haunted places in the state. But before we start the video, I do want to say, if you guys have not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It shows me that you guys enjoy the videos and that the work I put into them wasn't for nothing. On top of that, I started liking and getting into horror and things related to scary stuff because my mom shared her enjoyment of scary videos and stuff like that with me. And now I am doing this and I'm expanding my love for it by making these videos. So if there's someone in your life that you think would enjoy watching scary videos or enjoy my videos at all, please share them. All right, first on the list is Lake Lanier, located about an hour northeast of Atlanta. Lake Lanier was built over what used to be the town of Oscarville, founded in the late 1800s. Many of its residents were formerly enslaved individuals who earned their freedom after the Civil War, and some even fought in the Civil War to earn their freedom. Oscarville became one of the most successful black communities of its time, built on skilled labor, farming, and overall pride. By 1911, the town had over 1,100 residents, but in 1912, racial tension erupted. White residents started violently attacking and falsely accusing members of the black community. Innocent people were lynched or ran out of town, and overall it was just brutal and horrific. Some believe that this racial tension and issues led to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers picking this location for their future location of a lake, which would later become Lake Lanier, so they could create power for Atlanta. However, there's no evidence to prove that this was done over racial tensions or racial things, and in reality, it was probably just chosen due to its location and the ease of it being able to be used for the dam. But either way, residents were pressured and eventually forced to leave their homes and the history that they'd built there. As author Lisa Russell explained in her book, Underwater Ghost Towns of North Georgia, to these people, the land was priceless. And imagine being told that everything that you've built and that you've just been around, from your history, from your home, to everything you've ever worked on, being told that you had to abandon everything, and all because a lake was going to pretty much destroy everything that you had. And despite resistance, nearly all of the residents were displaced, with some wanting to stay and, like I said, being forced out. And in 1956, the Buford Dam was completed. The sluice gates were closed and the lake began to fill. As the waters rose, homes, buildings, and even graves stunk underneath the surface. And usually I try to say how much the dam or building or whatever I'm talking about cost to be constructed, but I couldn't find a clear number, and that's because some sources said that the whole project, including the lake and the dam and everything, would cost around $1 billion in the 50s, while others said it was more or less at around $750,000. So honestly, I'm not really sure how much it costs, but either way, it was a massive project and a lot of money was spent on it. And today, Lake Lanier fuels Atlanta and surrounding states such as Florida, Alabama, and I guess technically they have to provide power for any state that the lake or that the rivers that flow through the states, like, it goes to. I don't know if that makes sense, but if the lake goes through Florida, then they have to give, or if the river flows through Florida, well, that was a lot of flow words, then they have to give Florida some of the power that's created by the lake. And on top of this, it also draws around 10 million visitors a year. With me, actually, I've visited the lake twice, with the first time me not even knowing any of the history that was behind it or how many people die there each year. So the lake has actually had over 700 deaths since it started being filled in 1956, only 69 years ago. I'm not going to say it, but kind of a perfect year to talk about the lake. I don't know, maybe. And in reality, just saying like the number of people that died in a lake over the last 69 years or 31 years isn't really too like it's kind of hard to understand that until you compare it to the lakes around it. And one of those lakes is actually Lake Alatona, which I hope I pronounced it right, but Lake Alatona is a very similar lake and has around the same number of visitors, but only a third of the deaths occurring there. And these deaths that happen at Lake Lanier are blamed on a few different things, with one of those being the objects that are under the water. In photos of Lake Lanier, you can sometimes see trees, poles, buildings, or anything like that poking through the surface. And when water levels drop and there's like droughts or something like that, even more hazards appear, causing boaters to crash and boats to crash into the objects, and maybe even possibly swimmers getting trapped and drowning under these objects under the water. And others blame these deaths on the Lady of the Lake, a woman who died in a car accident only 2 years after the lake was created. Dahlia Parker Young and Susie Roberts were driving a Ford sedan on State Route 53. While driving across Jerry D. Jackson Bridge, which crosses Lake Lanier, the driver would lose control of her car and drive right off the bridge. And 18 months later, a fisherman who was fishing at the bridge or near the bridge would see a decomposing body floating on top of the water with a beautiful blue dress. And this body actually belonged to Dahlia Parker Young. And it's said that today her spirit is still haunting the area and the lake to this day. People will be driving over the bridge or driving in the area and see the lady in the blue dress on the side of the road. And others think that something that causes the drowning in the lake is actually her pulling down the people by their legs or whatever so that they can, or so that she can try to make them die in the same way that she did. The Ford sedan, actually, since it had crashed, hadn't been seen since it crashed, and there were zero traces of it, and it had just literally disappeared. But around the 90s, the bridge actually needed renovated, so they would start working on it, which is actually kind of surprising for American infrastructure, like America actually investing and trying to fix what was going on with their infrastructure. Pretty good. I guess that only happened in the 90s because that doesn't really happen anymore. Anyways, so while they were working on the bridge, they would actually find what was left of the sedan and the remains of Susie Roberts in the front seat. And while I don't live in the area, I do have some friends that live around 10 minutes away from the lake. And when I talk to them about the lake being haunted and stuff similar to that topic, they had some pretty interesting theories of their own and some interesting insights. And I'm not saying that these things are true or not, but they said that the reason that so many people have died in the lake and there's been so many drownings and stuff like that is because of power lines and other electricity things going into the water and off of docks into the water, causing people to jump in the water and become shocked and drown. So again, I'm not saying that that's true, but that's just kind of a local theory about why so many of these things are happening and so many of these deaths occur. But either way, something weird is definitely happening in and around the lake. And that's because people often hear church bells from under the water, to other stories from divers and people swimming in the water. And I want to kind of talk about some of these stories of people who have and divers that have been in the water, because they're just crazy. And some of these stories actually go back to when they were trying to find the Ford sedan that crashed into the water. And when they were searching for the car, many of the divers mentioned seeing a woman under the water watching them, which literally gives me chills thinking about. And because so many people have died at the lake, they have divers at a regular basis diving and trying to find bodies. And one of these divers, which is named Buck Buchanan, said that he sometimes felt body parts in the lake, and that you reach out into the dark and you feel an arm or a leg and it doesn't move. Because of this and all the crazy things that divers have mentioned and seen under the water, they now use underwater drones so that divers don't have to see and deal with these crazy things anymore. Also, at the time of recording this, there was just a boat explosion that happened, which is not a very uncommon thing that happens at the lake, and 5 people were injured. And going back to the whole underwater drone thing, if something wasn't happening weird under the water, they would not be investing in these drones to help find things. There has to be something strange going on for them to not want to put people in the water and not put these divers at risk. So I don't necessarily know what it is, but a lot of divers have stories similar to what I mentioned, so that's probably what it is, but I don't know. Moving on, about 5 hours southeast of Lake Lanier is Savannah, Georgia, arguably one of the most haunted cities in America. Savannah has seen fires, war, yellow fever outbreaks, and deaths literally layered into their foundations. If you've been to Savannah, Georgia, you probably know a lot of these stories and a lot of these things, but Savannah, Georgia is literally built on graves. And if you've been there, you've probably walked on what used to be dead bodies. After saying all those things, it kind of sounds weird that I said this or that I'm going to say this, but I love Savannah so much, and I may make a whole separate video on just the city. So if you guys would like to see that, subscribe for that video. But anyways, one of Savannah, Georgia's most haunted places is the Marshall House, which was built in 1851 by Mary Magdalene Lever Marshall. Probably just completely butchered that. And I'm gonna have the picture on the screen, and I'm not trying to be mean, but if her nose looked like that in real life, that's kind of rough. But I'm not trying to be mean. Hopefully the painting is just made her nose look bigger. I don't know. And I guess we should get back to the hotel, but it was actually the second hotel built in Savannah and served a lot of different purposes throughout its history, which includes housing Civil War soldiers when Union troops took it over during the war. It was also used as a hospital at the time, and many of the people that would come into the hospital were wounded in the Civil War. I mean, obviously they didn't just show up, they had some kind of issues, but a lot of them were having issues and damage to their limbs, where they would often be amputated because at the time surgeries were rough. They didn't really know a lot of the procedures, and from cleaning to how to properly do a surgery to even knowing that they were supposed to wash their hands. So like I said, a lot of these surgeries were done very rough, and limbs were often amputated instead of trying to be fixed. And when these limbs were often amputated, there was little to no anesthesia used, and most of the time they'd probably just give them some alcohol, which it can fix a lot of things, but I don't think it can fix getting your arm amputated. But that's my opinion. I don't know. Maybe if you drink enough, it will. But you may ask yourself, what did they do with these limbs? They decided the best thing to do with them was to toss them under the floorboards. And for years, they didn't even know that these were here until they would later do renovations. And on top of the hotel or hospital being used for these kinds of surgeries and as a Civil War hotel or hospital or whatever. It was also used to treat yellow fever patients, which will come up later. The yellow fever will come up later in the next location. But after the war, it reopened as a hotel in 1880 and expanded into its neighboring hotel or building, the Florida House, and was eventually renovated again in 1899 with electricity and running water being added to every floor of the hotel, which was quite a luxury and not normal at the time. But anyways, it closed temporarily and would finally reopen in 1999, and to this day still operates. So after all that being said, what makes the Marshall House haunted? And there's a long list of things that it does, but some of those things include faucets turning on and off, doors rattling, like you'll be laying in bed and the door will rattle, and children's laughter in empty hallways. So you'll just hear a child laughing outside your door. You go out there and no one's out there. And guests have also heard marbles rolling across the wooden floors, which you know that no kid is playing with marbles today. They'd have their Switch or whatever out there, not marbles. And there's also been apparitions of Civil War soldiers seen throughout the hotel, and most of them missing limbs. And bad smells have been reported throughout the hotel, but especially in room 214, 314, and most like known being in room 414, which is the most haunted of all the rooms. And in room 414, staff often play gospel music to calm the spirits and reduce the stench that comes from all the rooms that I just mentioned, but mostly from 414. And while playing these gospel music and stuff helps the issues that happen in the other rooms, it's been said that it does not really touch room 414. And some of the stories that people have about the hotel is one of them involving a boy who, him and his mother would end up checking into the hotel, and once they checked in the hotel, they would go to their room and he would go to the bathroom. Nothing really weird until he would end up screaming in the bathroom, running out, and he would say that another boy had hit him, but no one else was in there. And some guests have even reported having child-sized bite marks appearing out of nowhere on their bodies. And another very common apparition or spirit inside the hotel is in the lobby, which people have seen a man wearing a Civil War uniform, missing an arm, and asking where the surgeon is at. So he's just standing in the lobby, holding his arm, asking where the surgeon is to reattach it. And just a few blocks away from Marshall's house is Factor's Walk. And these two locations being so close to each other will probably never happen again on the series, so it's kind of strange that, I mean, it's not if you know Savannah, Georgia's history, but it's strange that two of these locations in Georgia are so close to each other. And Factor's Walk is a 0.4 mile cobblestone path behind River Street. The cobblestone path is and has a history dating back all the way back to the 1840s. 184 years ago, and only 10 years before the Marshall House was constructed. One of the buildings between it and what's now River Street were built all the way back in the 1810s and more specifically 1819. And this whole wall or bluff on the side of the Factor's Walk dates all the way back to 1733, when the original 40-foot wall was along the river. It was Savannah, Georgia, 40-foot wall river. And that was done to help protect from the city eroding. And as time passed and more people came to Savannah, the wall started to erode, which was kind of the whole point of the wall. But just because the traffic and so many people, the erosion happened anyways. But on top of this, the buildings that were built on River Street were kind of difficult to get to. So Factor's Walk and the road in general, that path that was created, it kind of shows why it became so important, which helps us get back to the 1840s date that we said earlier. This is when Charles B. Clucky started building huge rooms into the wall that were later called Clucky's Embankment Stores. And by the 1850s, a man named Michael Cash started constructing the stone wall that is there to this day. And the wall would actually be completed in 1869. Another Anyways, and throughout this time, all kinds of horrible, crazy, horrific, and I mean, any kind of word you want to throw out there, things would happen around and on Factor's Walk, which goes back to its name and how it got its name, Factor's Walk. It was actually called Factor's Walk because the men who decided the price of cotton and other things being exported from not only the US, but around the world, these men were called factors. And as I said earlier, this path was used by factors to easily move and walk around the area, allowing it to earn the name Factor's Walk. Most of these buildings along the path in River Street, and if you've ever been to Savannah, Georgia and walked around River Street and been into like the candy shops or anything like that, most of these at the time of what I'm talking about were used as cotton warehouses and overall a part of the king cotton trade or idea at the time. And Factor's Walk played a massive role in the slave trade as well, with thousands and thousands and maybe even possibly hundreds of thousands of slaves entering America through this road. And with this long history and the abundance of bad juju from even a man dying on it before it was completed, it was bound to be one of the most haunted places in Georgia. As I showed earlier, Factor's Walk has 3 levels, with those being the top, middle, and bottom, all allowing for entrances into different parts of the buildings that were used to be the cotton warehouses. However, the middle level once had entrances into tunnels that went throughout the whole city, with many of those leading to the basements of houses or businesses, and actually many of those businesses have still reported seeing and having attachments to those tunnels to this day. And while the entrances to the tunnels are closed today, the tunnels themselves still remain. And honestly, if I ever get a chance to go into them, like, you're not allowed, but if I ever get a chance, I'll definitely take up that offer, because I think doing a little paranormal research in there would kind of be cool, and I think it'd be super creepy. While you can't necessarily or legally enter the tunnels today, people have seen apparitions leaving through the entrances that, I mean, I showed the picture, but they're bricked over now. You can't enter them. But people have still seen apparitions leaving the entrances and have heard the echoes of cries, yelling, talking, and even more come from the tunnels, from both adults and children. And again, if you guys know anything about Savannah, Georgia and its history, these tunnels also lead to the infamous Pirate House, another extremely haunted place not only in Savannah, but Georgia as a whole. And pirates would once use these tunnels to kidnap people and bring them back to their boats. And the old Chandler Hospital also used these tunnels to store bodies during the massive yellow fever outbreaks in Savannah. So these tunnels have witnessed all kinds of things, from slaves being transported in them, to yellow fever patients that have died, to people being kidnapped, to all kinds of things. So you can kind of understand why it probably doesn't have the best reputation and why it has some of these dark things that happen around them and why it's so haunted. But witnesses have also mentioned seeing black figures walking, and not only through but around parts of Factor's Walk, and they've also heard loud footsteps follow them, and when they turned around, nothing was there, which I'll try to post some, like, obviously I'm going to have some pictures throughout this video, but if you guys have ever been, it's kind of like a dark, dingy alley. So walking through there at night and hearing someone walk behind you and then turning around and not seeing anyone, or hearing someone scream behind you, oh my gosh, I'd be running so fast. I'd get out of there. That'd freak me out, especially because of kind of how it is. With that out of the way, I'm now going to talk about some of, like, I usually talk about some stories like I did with the Marshall House and stuff like that, but I have personal stories for this part of the area and Factor's Walk as a whole. And one of the personal stories that I have revolve around one of the million ghost tours that I've done in Savannah. And this actually happened while we were looking down at one of the tunnels that I was just talking about earlier. And the guide kind of explained to us that many of the enslaved people in the area and probably throughout the US were actually forced to wear iron collars to prevent them from escaping, or to just have a horrible punishment and make them wear it. So the tour guide kind of explained to us that people often see a man standing down in the little tunnel when they take pictures. So my mom took her camera, went over to the old tunnel and took a picture. And I have goosebumps, but literally in that picture, you can see a man behind the bars wearing one of those iron collars. And if I can find the photo, I'll put it here, but I don't know if I'll be able to. Hopefully I can, because you can very clearly see a man standing behind the bars just looking at us in that dark tunnel. We really couldn't believe it, and it was just really unsettling. And I mean, honestly, one of the very few times we've actually seen something on a ghost tour. And the second story that I have surrounding Savannah, Georgia, actually is from one of the times my family stayed in an Airbnb on Bay Street. And it was kind of in between Bay Street, Factors Walk, and River Street. The reason why I said all three of those places is because it was a 3-story building. So you'd enter on Bay Street, and then the bottom level was on the lower level of Factors Walk. So me and my brother stayed on the bottom floor, which was, like I said, directly on Factors Walk. And we had no idea the history behind Factors Walk at the time. So we just thought it was a normal place, a normal hotel, normal Airbnb, whatever. We thought it was just a normal place because we didn't know the history. So that night we felt very weird and in a very uncomfortable energy. So, sorry, my nose is really itchy for some reason. Hopefully I don't have something on my face now. And I just hit the microphone. So the next day, a younger family member of ours said that, and this was at night, so that didn't help at all, said that she saw a little girl looking for her mother in the Airbnb. Wow, talking is so difficult sometimes. In the Airbnb that we were staying in. And none of the rest of us saw it, so obviously we were all freaked out, but being that me and my brother were younger, we were still freaked out even more than the adults that were with us. And it was actually, when this happened, we were actually in the living room, and she looked down the hallway and said that she saw the little girl. Me and my brother actually had to sleep on that floor that night. Yeah, let's just say we didn't get much sleep that night. And while I was writing the script for this video, I looked into my bathroom hallway and saw a large black shadowy figure standing in the hallway. So yeah, that's also pretty cool. But anyways, if you guys enjoyed the video, please hit that subscribe button. It means, like I said, the world to me. And if you could also share it with someone who loves haunted stuff, haunted stories, spooky history, or who lives in the state of Georgia, please share it with them. And again, please hit that subscribe button. It means the world. I'm trying to reach 500 subscribers by the end of the year, and every bit and little bit of support and every subscriber literally helps more than you could think. Also, let me know in the comments if I missed any haunted locations in Georgia, and tell me what state I should do next. And if the haunted location is scary enough and I think interesting enough, I might make a separate video about that in the future. But anyways, thank you guys for watching today's video. Again, if you liked it, please subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.